Air dropped before the first scream finished forming. Gideon Cade felt it in his ears first. Pressure squeezed, released, and never returned to normal. His wristband flashed red, with a pressure arrow pointing down, the only warning that mattered on a dome world. The dome lights dipped, then snapped too bright, like the colony was forcing calm. Then the floor bucked under his feet. Somewhere above Asterian reach, a pilot on an orbital warship pressed a fire key. Multiple missiles screamed toward the residential district, arriving so close together they felt like one long punch. The timing was measured and deliberate, not angry. Residential Tier 7 caved in first. An apartment stack folded floor by floor, then dropped into itself with a grinding crash. A corner tower leaned, snapped, and vanished in a boiling wall of dust that rolled across the street grid. Market Row took the second strike. The promenade buckled, kiosks crushed flat, and the roof lattice fell in heavy sheets. The market became a trench of twisted metal and shattered lights in seconds. The third strike slammed into the community annex near Transit Spine 2. The main roof buckled, a corridor wall split, and pressure doors throughout the transit network slammed shut. People were trapped on the wrong side of air, in sections that still looked clean. The dome did not burn in one wave. It failed in pieces, and every piece that failed stole breath. Gideon still had a mug in his hand when Alara Cade snapped her head toward the window. Rowan Cade was already at the panel, palm against the sealed laminate, eyes tracking streaks of fire cutting across the dome sky. Alara asked, "Was that from our own ships?" Gideon had once worn a uniform that taught him patterns like this. He did not answer with comfort. He answered with the only thing that mattered. "Masks on your belt." Now, a distant hiss rolled through the building like fabric tearing. Loose dust fell from a ceiling seam, as if the structure exhaled wrong. Gideon's wristband arrow dipped again, and he did the arithmetic without speaking. If it kept sliding for 2 more minutes, people would start gasping in corridors that still looked normal. Rowan's voice went thin. "They're firing into the housing blocks." Alara moved on instinct. She clipped a mask to her belt and checked the seals like she had done it 1,000 times. She had not, but fear made her fast. Gideon ripped open the closet and yanked out a compact kit he had sworn he would never touch again. Filters, patch tape, a breathing mask, and a handheld pressure gauge. His hands moved like they remembered war, even if his mouth refused to say the word. Rowan watched him. "You planned for this." "I plan to be wrong," Gideon said. The wall speaker came alive, calm and clean, like a nurse reading bad news without blinking. "Attention. This is a shelter directive. Evacuate to the nearest hub immediately. Follow the blue floor strip. Carry only essential supplies. Repeat, evacuate now." Alara stared at the speaker, jaw tight. "They're telling people to move after they fired? Who gave that order?" Gideon crossed to the console. The status line that should have been green was gray, and a polite message blinked on the screen. It read, "Network delay. Please stand by." He stared at the word "please" and felt an old certainty lock into place. System said please when they were buying time, and time was never free. Rowan swallowed. If orbital control did this, why is the public channel dead? The question formed in Gideon's mind, hard and central, and it would not let go. Who was cutting the colony's voice, and what did they need everyone to do while they waited? Outside their door, the corridor filled with neighbors moving with force calm. Some carried small bags, some held pets too close, and some kept a hand locked around a sleeve so a loved one would not vanish in the crowd. The corridor lights shifted into emergency mode, and a blue strip along the floor lit up, pointing toward the nearest shelter hub. Alara kept her voice steady, but it shook at the edges. "Is this real?" Gideon met her eyes. "It is real. If we stay here, we gamble with air." He set the goal in plain words, because panic loved vagueness. "We get to the hub. We get sealed. We stay together." They pushed into the flow. The air fell dry for a moment, then damp again, like the pumps were choking and restarting. Gideon watched his wristband and counted seconds in his head, because counting gave the mind something to hold while the body wanted to panic. Rowan raised his tablet and pulled up a sky map. The display stuttered, then refreshed with red markers scattered across the perimeter. There were too many to count, and they moved in coordinated arcs. Rowan's voice dropped. They are inside firing range. Alara tried to pull neutral relays and got nothing but blank errors. Her jaw tightened as she tried again, then stopped wasting time. The neutral relays are dead. I cannot pull a single channel. How does that happen? It happens when someone wants us blind, Gideon said. The building shuddered again. It was not a random quake. It was timed and spaced, controlled like a drill. Gideon knew the rhythm and hated knowing it. The speaker issued another message, still calm. Seal breach confirmed in residential tier 7. Proceed to shelter hubs. Do not stop. Do not return for property. A scream cut through the crowd. Someone tried to run the wrong way and got dragged back by a relative who understood what missing air meant. The blue strip bent around a junction, and for a second Gideon saw the choice ahead like a test with only one passing answer. Left led toward a shelter hub. Right led toward the medical distribution artery. Alara's eyes flicked right. Instinct tried to be noble at the worst time. My unit is that way. There are supplies. Gideon kept his voice steady. People will need you alive. Rowan pointed left. That hatch line is still sealed. The indicators are green. They pushed left into reinforced walls and heavier doors. The kind of corridor built for the day everyone hoped would never come. Through a viewport, Gideon saw flashes near the industrial spine, domes lit in brief, harsh blooms as if struck by deliberate fire. Not meteors, not accidents, not a mistake. A name moved through the crowd in hushed bursts, repeated like a curse. The Sable Dominion, someone whispered. Alara went pale. Rowan stopped breathing for a beat. Rowan said, they do not negotiate. No, he don't play. They do not. They reached the shelter hub hatch. The indicators still showed green, and Rowan slammed his palm to the access plate. The hatch began to cycle, slow enough to feel like it might fail. Behind them, the corridor erupted with a sound like tearing fabric. A seal somewhere blew, and a gust of air yanked at clothing and loose bags. People screamed and grabbed for anything solid as the world tried to inhale them. The hatch cycled faster, as if the system was trying to save what it could. Gideon shoved Alara through first. Rowan pulled two strangers in behind him before the door could close. Gideon stepped in last, and the hatch sealed with a heavy thud. Inside, the shelter air smelled of disinfectant and recycled oxygen. It smelled like survival rationed by policy, measured and counted. A screen on the far wall tried to pull the colony feed, blinked, failed, then switched to a grainy emergency camera. One of the outer domes had collapsed inward, as if pressure had been turned against it. Then the image cut to black. The screen displayed a blunt message, cold and short. Broadcast ceased. A new feed came up, clean and steady, looking down at Asterian Reach from high orbit like a specimen under glass. A dark symbol floated in the corner, sharp and unmistakable. The Sable Dominion did not speak. It showed. Impact struck the industrial spine with method, not rage. Power nodes that fed the domes went first, then pressure pump stations, then water routing hubs, then the medical coordination center. The colony did not burn as one blaze. It failed like a system being unplugged in the correct order. Alara stepped closer to the screen, hands trembling. They're doing it on purpose. Rowan stopped pacing. They want it recorded. Gideon forced his hands open. He had promised himself he was done with war, and he had believed that if he loved his wife and built a small life, the universe might allow it. The universe did not allow it, and the Dominion did not allow it. The feed glitched, and audio cut in and out. Gideon heard a laugh on a distant channel, bored and amused, like pain was just background noise. Alara turned to him, voice small. Are they going to stop? Gideon could have lied. He did not. No, he said. Time stretched, slow and cruel. The feed continued, indifferent and precise. Each cut another lesson about what mattered and what did not. Then stopped. The screen went black. Words appeared, cold and final. Compliance achieved. Hours later, rescue teams opened the shelter and guided survivors into reinforced corridors. Gideon walked with a weight in his chest, and Alara stayed close with her hand on his sleeve like touch could keep reality from moving. Rowan scanned corners as if expecting the sky to step through a door. They reached a triage point in a bright hall that was too bright, trying to pretend the world was still normal. Medics moved fast, names were called, lists were checked, and people were sorted like problems that had to be solved before they could grieve. Alara was pulled aside for evaluation. Rowan volunteered to help move supplies. Gideon watched both of them and tried to hold them in his eyes like that could keep them here. A new tremor hit, closer. The hall lights blinked, a wall panel burst, and sparks sprayed across the floor. People shouted, and the air changed again, thinner and meaner. Gideon ran toward Alara. A pressured door slammed down between them. It sealed with a grinding scream, and a red light flashed above it. The automated voice spoke, steady and indifferent. Section sealed. Containment engaged. Gideon pressed his palms to the door. Alara. No answer reached him. The emergency lights dimmed on his side, and the corridor felt smaller with every breath. The air did not vanish. It simply lost kindness. Rowan appeared behind him, breathless. Gideon, we have to move. The corridor is losing pressure. Gideon did not turn. He kept pressing the door as if stubborn hands could change physics. A medic grabbed his shoulder. Sir, please. That section is compromised. We cannot open it. Gideon turned, and the medic flinched at his face. Not because of anger, because of the lack of it. Rowan's voice cracked. Gideon, she is on the other side. Gideon nodded once. He understood, and he hated understanding. A second containment door slammed farther down the hall. Someone screamed a name. Security tackled a man who tried to run for the seal, and the struggle sounded like despair scraping against policy. Gideon watched it all and saw the Dominion feed in his mind, clean and calm. He saw the phrase compliance achieved, and he felt what it was meant to do. It was meant to teach helplessness as a habit. He took a breath that tasted like recycled air and burned metal. Then he looked at Rowan. We are leaving, Gideon said. Rowan stared at him. Leaving where? The port is down. Gideon looked toward the emergency signage and the direction of the service tunnels. Anywhere that gets me off this world, he said. Rowan, step closer. You are not thinking straight. I am thinking clearer than I have in years, Gideon replied. A shelter officer approached, trying to sound authoritative. Sir, civilian movement is restricted. We are under attack. Gideon leaned in close enough for the officer to see his eyes. I served long enough to know the difference between a battle and a slaughter, Gideon said. This was a message. I am going to answer it. Rowan caught Gideon's arm. Alone, Gideon held Rowan's gaze. The question sat between them and demanded an answer. Rowan nodded once. Minutes later, in the service tunnels, everything happened too fast and too wrong. When it was over, Rowan was not with them anymore. Gideon did not explain it. He could not fix it. He only absorbed the loss and kept moving. He walked like a man who had made a decision that could not be undone. Above the dome, the Dominion fleet still held its positions. Gideon Cade set his jaw and moved into the dark. He was done asking for safety. Now, he was going to find the hand that signed the message. Gideon Cade learned to measure time by the taste of recycled air. It changed when filters were tired, and it changed when sealant was still curing. Even in a cockpit, the air told the truth. His craft did not have a name worth saying. It was a patched hull with a stubby engine and a cockpit that smelled like hot metal and old tape. He called it a boat because it kept his mind simple. The quiet belt stretched ahead as a band of cold debris and forgotten platforms. It was not a place people visited for comfort. It was where you went when you needed to disappear. Gideon did not disappear to hide. He disappeared to hunt. He had left Asterian Reach with nothing but a kit, a mask, and a promise he could not take back. Every burn of the engine cost heat and fuel, and every hour of pressure cost water. He logged every choice like it could keep him alive. He found his first target by watching traffic patterns, not by chasing rumors. A small Dominion fuel hauler drifted near a relay buoy, running quiet, trusting its insignificance. Gideon waited until the hauler changed attitude, then matched its shadow. The hauler had one escort drone, cheap and slow, and Gideon did not shoot it. He jammed its sensor feed with a burst that made it stare into empty space. He slid close enough to read the hauler's hull markings. The Sable Dominion had stamped them deep, like ownership was a law of nature. Gideon felt his jaw tighten, then forced his hand steady. He fired a single cutter beam at the hauler's external pump line. The line burst in a glittering spray that froze into crystals. Fuel bled into the void, and the hauler's engines coughed once, then died. A voice crackled over an open channel, strained and confused. Unknown craft. Identify yourself? Gideon did not answer. He watched the hauler drift, then spun away, careful not to leave a hot trail. He did not kill the crew, and he did not need bodies. He needed the Dominion to feel the first pinch of hunger. Over the next days, he hid a supply, cache hidden inside a hollow rock. He struck a transfer platform that fed patrol routes, and he clipped a communication splice that forced 3 Dominion teams to fly blind for hours. Each time, he kept it tight and small. He stole filters, sealant, and battery cells, and he left the rest to drift. He told himself he was being disciplined, and he told himself that discipline was not mercy. On the 7th day, he noticed the change. A patrol route shifted by a few minutes. 2 ships that used to fly in lazy parallel now staggered timing. A buoy that never rotated had started turning its dish in small sweeps, like it was listening. Gideon sat in the cockpit, watching the quiet belt spin slowly on his display. His ship's temperature rose by a single degree because he had held position too long. He shut down a secondary system, and he waited anyway. A new signal appeared, weak and almost polite. It read, Navigation Advisory, Hazard Scan in Progress. It was the kind of message a normal authority would send. The problem was that no normal authority owned this region. Gideon stared at it until his eyes hurt. Who are you? He whispered. The message did not answer. It did not need to. He felt the trap forming like pressure behind a door. He fired the engine for a short burn, just enough to slide away from the buoy's line of sight. He kept heat, low and angle shallow. When he looked back, the buoy's dish stopped sweeping and held steady, like it had found him and no longer needed to pretend. Gideon breathed in and out slow. He did not have a fleet. He had a boat and a grudge. He also had a mind that used to plan raids under worse odds than this. He set his next target with care, choosing something small enough to strike and vanish from. Then he saw the patrol pattern shift again, and he understood the Dominion was not just reacting. Someone was learning. Archon Mailer Voss did not believe in rage as a strategy. Rage made you loud, and loud made you predictable. He stood in a command chamber lit by thin bands of dark blue light. Screens floated in a half circle around him, each carrying a different view of the quiet belt. Fuel loss reports, delayed shipments, patrol teams returning with empty racks. Nothing catastrophic yet, and that was the point. Voss watched the data with a stillness that unsettled the officers near him. He did not ask if they were scared. He knew they were. He wants us to chase him, Voss said. An analyst cleared his throat. He is a single craft. We can tighten the net and crush him. Voss turned his head slightly, like he was listening to a distant sound. Crush him where? In open space where he can choose angles? Or near a neutral port where witnesses can be bought? No one answered. They did not want to admit he had already decided. A second figure joined the command feed, a lean silhouette with a smooth voice. Your problem is not the craft, Envoy Sail Dravik said. Your problem is the story. Voss looked interested. Speak. Dravik's eyes gleamed with contempt disguised as patience. A lone human striking supply lines becomes a symbol. Symbols spread faster than ships. The Accordium Synod pretends to hate violence, but they love a narrative. A third feed opened. Warden Curator Nix Varro appeared, face calm, hands folded. I can make him a criminal, Nix said. Not a soldier. Not a survivor. A criminal. Voss's gaze sharpened. An Earth. Nix's voice stayed even. Earth will be framed as the source. If they speak, they look defensive. If they stay silent, they look guilty. Dravik leaned closer to his camera. We do not need to destroy Earth yet. We need the galaxy to believe Earth deserves what is coming. Voss tapped a control, and a supply route map expanded. A chain ran near Crown Line Freeport, and the lane looked vulnerable. That was why it would work. We will offer him a gift, Voss said. A target he cannot ignore. An officer frowned. If we expose this lane, he will strike. Yes, Voss said. And when he strikes, he will tell us who he is. Nix's eyes narrowed with quiet satisfaction. We should seed the lane with a false distress beacon. Make it look like a human salvage crew is trapped. He will not resist. Voss looked at Nix for a long moment. Do you know that? Or do you hope it is true? Nix did not blink. I know what grief does to a disciplined man. Dravik nodded. He will come. He will come angry. Anger narrows choices. Voss zoomed in on docking tags near the neutral port. Then we do not catch him in the belt. We catch him where neutrality can be bent. He let the map hover for a breath. Prepare the lane. Keep ships hidden. Keep the net cold. When he fires, we close. An officer hesitated. If we capture him alive, what then? Voss answered without raising his voice. We display him. We make him teach the lesson Asterian Reach began. We make him a living warning. Nix's mouth softened. And if he dies in the attempt, Voss's gaze sharpened. Then we claim he chose death. Either way, the story belongs to us. Far away, in a patched craft drifting among cold rocks, Gideon Cade watched a supply lane that looked too open to be real. Suspicion sat in his chest like weight. Suspicion was a luxury. Grief was not. He set a course toward Crown Line Freeport. Crown Line Freeport looked like a bright scar on the dark. It was a neutral station, a place that sold safety in small, expensive portions. Its lights were clean, and its rules were printed in a dozen languages. Gideon stayed outside the traffic lane, hiding behind a derelict barge stripped down to a metal skeleton. He watched shuttles glide in and out, like war was a rumor that never reached their docks. The supply lane he had tracked ran close to the port's outer marker buoys. If he cut it here, the Dominion would feel it in front of witnesses, and witnesses were a kind of pressure too. His console pinged with a distress signal. Weak, old format, tagged as human. The message sounded thin and tired. Emergency, salvage crew pinned. Low oxygen. Request assist. Gideon froze. His thumb hovered over the channel toggle. Is this real? He asked the empty cockpit. He hated himself for asking. He hated himself more for already moving. He burned the engine once, short and controlled. The boat slid toward the distress tag, staying low on power. Heat stayed down, sensors stayed tight, and the void stayed indifferent. The tag led him to a cargo pod, drifting just off the neutral lane. Its hull was scored, and its beacon blinked slow, like a tired heartbeat. Gideon circled it once. No engine signature. No life support hum. No heat. He felt the trap close in his mind, and it was already too late. Nothing is inside, he whispered. His console flashed. New markers lit up around him. They had been there the whole time, cold and silent, hidden among traffic clutter and station noise. Dominion Hunter ships, 3 of them, and a net drone with a wide, ugly profile. A voice came through, smooth and confident. It did not sound frightened. Gideon Cade, power down. You will be taken alive. Gideon's throat tightened. He did not answer. He snapped his hands to the controls and tried to pivot away from the net drone. The drone fired a spread of tether lines, not explosive and not dramatic. It was designed to wrap, slow, and drag. One tether caught his aft panel. The boat jerked, warning lights blinked, and engine temperature spiked. Gideon pushed for a burn anyway. The boat strained, then coughed. It did not have the power to break free clean. Another voice cut in, layered with the first, like someone wanted an audience. This is what happens when criminals attack a lawful dominion. Gideon recognized the tone. Not military, political, meant to be recorded. He looked toward Crown Line Freeport. The station's cameras could see this. Neutral feeds could be hijacked. The trap was not only the net. The trap was the story. He forced the boat into a roll, scraping one tether against the derelict barge. The line snapped, but the maneuver cost heat and distance. His fuel gauge dipped. The net drone fired again. 2. Tethers latched. The boat lurched hard. Gideon's shoulders slammed into the harness, and he tasted blood and metal. A third voice joined, calm and clinical. You will be treated fairly. You will be displayed as proof. Resist, and you will injure yourself. Gideon's eyes narrowed. Nix Varro. The voice did not deny it. You are famous, Gideon Cade. You should not waste that. Gideon laughed once, short and ugly. Famous is for people who still have something to lose. He stared at the tether lines and then at his fuel readout. He could try to run and die in the attempt, or he could cut the engine and be taken. If he was taken, he would become their lesson, their proof that humans were manageable. If he died, he would become a different kind of lesson, still theirs. He looked toward the neutral station again. Clean lights, clean rules, silent cameras. Are they broadcasting this? He asked. Nix's voice stayed smooth. Of course. The Accordium Synod will appreciate your cooperation. Gideon's heart slowed into a cold survival calm. He pulled a small tool from his kit, a cutter meant for seal tape and emergency panels. He did not cut the tether. He cut his own external fuel dump line. A thin stream vented into the void, flashing into crystals. The vent created a brief fog of frozen particles that could blind sensors for seconds. He needed seconds. He fired the engine in a short pulse. The boat lurched forward, dragging tethers through the crystal fog. The hunter ships reacted late, their sensors choked. Gideon aimed straight at the derelict barge again. It was insane, and it was the only cover. The boat scraped metal. Sparks flared. One tether snapped. The second held. He shoved the throttle. The engine screamed, then faltered. The fuel gauge dropped fast. The net drone reappeared out of the fog, closing. Gideon saw the next spread of tether lines and felt the corridor narrowing. He did not have fuel for another burn. He did not have time for another trick. He could still choose. Cut power and live as a prisoner. Or push the failing engine and risk turning the boat into a coffin. He stared at the console, then spoke to the empty air. Alara. Rowan. I am still here. He drove the throttle forward. The engine gave him one last surge like a dying animal. The boat lunged toward open space, dragging the final tether. Then the surge died. The cockpit lights dimmed. The pressure pump-hum took on that thin, tired edge again. The boat coasted while hunter ships closed in, clean and controlled. The net drone floated ahead, patient. Nix's voice returned, almost kind. You see? You cannot outrun a dominion that has decided to own you. Gideon sat very still. His breath fogged his mask for a moment, then cleared. The dominion wanted him alive, not for mercy, for theater. He looked toward the neutral station one last time. No one intervened. Neutrality was a wall until it became a curtain. Gideon closed his eyes for a single heartbeat, then opened them. He did not beg. He did not plead. He waited for the moment the hatch would cut into his cabin. He was almost out of air, almost out of fuel, and almost out of time. And the Dominion was about to make him a lesson. The Accordium Synod did not smell like justice. It smelled like polished stone and recycled air. The scent of a place built to look clean while decisions stayed dirty. The chamber was a bowl of light, ringed with tiered seats and floating translation markers. Delegates sat behind banners that made their species look larger than life. Some wore ceremonial armor, some wore robes meant to signal restraint, and most wore fear. They spoke the same words in different tones. They expressed concern, urged patience, demanded investigation, and their voices moved in circles, careful not to touch the center. On a raised platform, Envoy Sail Dravik stood with easy posture. He did not look like a man who had anything to lose. His eyes traveled the room like he owned it. Dravik lifted one hand, and the chamber quieted faster than it should have. Even species that hated his presence preferred silence to angering him. You call this tragedy, Dravik said. I call it reality. A delegate from a small trade coalition tried to respond. Their voice shook, and the translation markers struggled to keep up. 2.5 million civilians, the delegate said. Asterian Reach was a settlement. It was not a fortress. Dravik smiled like the words amused him. Settlements exist because stronger forces permit them, he replied. Order is not a gift. It is enforced. A murmur rippled, not agreement, recognition. Many in the Synod had built comfort on the assumption that someone else would take the risk. Across the chamber, an empty seat marked the Terran Union delegation. Their banner remained, but the space behind it was unoccupied. The absence pulled attention like a wound. A tall figure stepped forward on behalf of the Procedural Council. The official voice was practiced and bland. The Synod condemns unlawful violence, the figure said. We will form a committee. We will collect testimony. Dravik tilted his head. Committees do not stop fleets. He let the words reach every translator node. Earth should understand its position, he continued. You are new. You are fragile. You were allowed to sit among us because you behaved. Delegates shifted in their seats. Some glanced toward Dravik, then away, like eye contact could be counted as complicity. Warden Curator Nix Varro appeared on a side platform, projected larger than life. Nix did not need physical presence. Nix needed a feed and an audience. There is another matter, Nix said. A human criminal has attacked Dominion supply assets. Several delegates leaned forward, not because they cared about supply ships, because the story offered relief. Relief was how fear survived. Nix raised a hand, and an image floated above the chamber floor. It showed a small craft near Crown Line Freeport, tethered and struggling. It showed heat blooms and drifting fuel crystals, and it showed the moment the neutral port cameras caught a human face through cockpit glass. Nix named Gideon Cade like a label on evidence. This human has conducted piracy and sabotage, Nix said. He has endangered neutral traffic. He has resisted lawful detention. A delegate asked, careful and trembling. Is he alive? Nix nodded once. He will be. The words carried a promise that was not humane. Dravik stepped closer to the projection, like he wanted the Synod to see him beside the narrative. Earth will deny him, Dravik said. Earth will call him a lone actor. Earth will claim grief. Earth will claim injustice. These are excuses. A delegate from a maritime species tried to hold ground. If Earth responds, will you call it war? The delegate asked. Dravik answered without hesitation. If Earth responds, we will call it what it is. A threat. Nix added, and the Synod will call it a war crime. A hush fell, sharp and heavy. The trap was visible and still. No one stood up to break it. If Earth stayed silent, they looked weak and isolated. If Earth struck back, they would be branded as aggressors. Nix had built the cage with words, and Dravik had welded the door with fear. A procedural counselor cleared their throat and tried to restore the illusion of control. The Synod recognizes the need for stability, they said. We urge all parties to refrain from escalation. Dravik laughed softly. Not loud, but it carried. Stability belongs to the strong, he said. The rest of you are in it, month by month. The chamber did not erupt. It did what it always did when faced with power. It looked away. Far from the Synod, Gideon Cade sat in darkness behind a transparent barrier. His wrists were restrained with a band that could tighten at a twitch. His air was clean, and his dignity was not. A Dominion officer watched him through the barrier, face blank. You are famous, the officer said. Do you understand that? Gideon looked up slowly. His voice was hoarse, but steady. I understand you want an example, he said. The officer nodded, like confirming a schedule. You will be shown to the Synod, the officer said. They will condemn you. They will thank us for keeping order. Gideon swallowed and tasted the bitterness of helplessness. He had hunted in the quiet belt. Now he was the thing on display. And somewhere, Earth still had not spoken. Earth did not answer the Synod. Earth did not answer Dravik. Earth did not answer Nix Varro. The silence spread like a cold front. News channels across 100 worlds ran the same claim in different languages. Terran Union absent. Terran Union mute. Terran Union broken. Speculators filled the gap with smug certainty. They said Earth was learning humility. They said the Dominion had finally put the new species in its place. They said the Synod had been right to avoid a direct clash. On the first day, the silence felt like fear. On the second day, it felt like surrender. On the third day, it became entertainment. Nix Varro fed that entertainment with steady hands. Clips of Gideon Cade, tethered and trapped, cycled through neutral networks. Each clip carried a caption that framed him as a criminal who threatened trade lanes. The captions did not mention Asterian Reach. They did not mention the cut list that strangled a colony. They did not mention civilians. They did not mention that neutrality had been used as a curtain. Words could hide facts when enough people wanted to look away. On the fourth day, Dominion patrols grew bolder. Ships moved closer to Terran space, not to attack, to signal comfort. Comfort was a weapon too. On the fifth day, Dravik returned to the Synod and spoke like the matter was finished. Earth has accepted its position, he said. The galaxy may proceed. On the sixth day, a rumor flickered in fringe channels. It claimed sealed Terran hangars under gray rock were opening. Nix Varro flagged the rumor as misinformation. Most people did not look again. On the seventh day, the first real signal appeared. It did not come through official relays. It did not arrive with a diplomatic header. It arrived like a note slid under a locked door. The ledger stands. No one knew what it meant at first. That was part of its force. The phrase did not beg. It did not threaten openly. It simply declared that something had been recorded, and the record mattered. In a quiet corridor inside Crown Line Freeport, a maintenance hatch opened at a time when it should not have. A figure in plain work gear stepped out, carrying a case that looked like tools. The figure walked with the calm of someone who belonged. Cameras glanced past. Security nodes did not trigger, not because the station was asleep, because someone had already paid for the station to look elsewhere. The figure reached an external docking bay where a small service skiff waited. The bay lights were dim, and the air smelled of lubricant and cold metal. The figure tapped the skiff hull twice, then spoke into the communications panel. The ledger stands. The skiff door opened. Inside, a team waited. They wore no flags, no bright insignia, no heroic paint. Their suits were plain and dark, built for work in vacuum and boarding actions that could not be recorded. One of them nodded at the figure. Target location, the team leader asked. The figure passed a data chip. Dominion transport cell, holding one human. Gideon Cade. The team leader did not ask why. The team leader asked what mattered. Time window, they asked. Short, the figure said. Nix Varro wants a show. The transfer schedule is tight. The team leader turned to the others. Move. They launched without drama. The skiff slid out into the dark and vanished into a low-visibility corridor of debris, using cover like language. Elsewhere, far from Crown Line, the Obsidian Vault network opened. It did not open with sirens. It opened with locks that had not turned in generations. It opened with quiet doors under lunar rock. Hidden freight lanes came alive. Ships without registry tags moved through deep routes that avoided common relays. Cargo stockpiled for decades began to move: filters, sealant, reactor parts, propellant, and the one resource that mattered most in war: time. In a cratered facility under pale stone, a control screen lit up in a small room. Two lines appeared, clean and unmistakable. Obsidian Vault network active. Black Ledger fleet staging. A technician read the lines and did not cheer. The room was too quiet for joy. They pressed a button protected by layered locks and human caution. A message went out to a handful of receivers, and it carried no long speech. The ledger stands. Gideon Cade did not hear that message. He was still behind a barrier, wrists restrained, watched by a Dominion officer who enjoyed predictability. But he felt the change anyway. He felt it when the guard rotation shifted. He felt it when the corridor outside his cell went oddly quiet. He felt it when a vibration ran through the hull that did not match engine burn. He leaned closer to the barrier. "What is that?" he asked. The officer's eyes flicked toward the corridor, then back. The officer did not answer. A few minutes later, the ship lights dimmed for half a breath. Air pressure stayed stable, but the feel of the room changed. It felt like the ship had stopped trusting itself. The barrier in front of Gideon went dark. Then it opened. Two figures moved through the doorway with controlled speed. Their suits were unmarked, and their faces were hidden behind clear shields reflecting Gideon's stunned expression. One raised a hand, palm out, firm. "Quiet," the figure said. "We are here for you." Gideon's throat tightened. "Who are you?" The figure did not answer with a name. The figure answered with a phrase. "The ledger stands," they said. Gideon stared for a heartbeat, then forced his body to move. He knew how fast rescue windows closed. They cut his restraints with an ordinary tool. They handed him a plain breathing mask and guided him into the corridor. No explosions, no shouting, only soft steps timed between sensor sweeps. As they moved, Gideon saw Dominion crew members frozen in place along a side passage. Eyes open, hands hovering near weapons they could not lift. "What did you do?" Gideon whispered. The rescuer answered in simple words. "We shut down their muscle commands. Temporary, non-lethal." Gideon swallowed. His mind tried to label it as magic, but the word did not fit. It sounded like signal warfare and nervous system interference. It sounded like preparation. They reached an airlock. The rescuer keyed it with a device that spoke to the lock in a language the lock accepted. Outside, a skiff waited, small and dark. It hugged the ship hull like shadow. Gideon stepped through and felt the cold bite of suit seals. The rescuer pushed him gently toward the skiff. Behind them, the Dominion ship remained intact. Its weapons remained quiet. Its crew remained alive. That was not mercy. That was control. They launched into darkness, using drifting debris as cover. Gideon watched the Dominion ship shrink behind them. He expected pursuit. He expected rage. Instead, the ship sat silent, like it did not understand what had been taken. For the first time since Asterian Reach, Gideon felt something other than grief and anger. He felt the presence of a larger plan. Gideon arrived at a place that did not exist on any public map. The approach route was confusing by design. The skiff docked inside a cavern carved into rock. Lights were dim and focused. The air smelled of coolant and clean steel. A corridor led him into a command space that looked more like a workshop than a throne room. People moved with purpose, and no one paused to stare at him. A woman waited near a plain table. Her uniform was simple. The only bright mark was a small Terran Union pin dulled on purpose. Admiral Sloan Mercer stood when Gideon entered. She studied him like a commander studied a tool that survived abuse. "Gideon Cade," she said. Gideon's voice came out rough. "You knew my name?" "We knew it before the Dominion broadcast it," Mercer replied. Heat rose in Gideon's chest. Where was this when Asterian Reach fell? Mercer did not flinch. Her answer sounded like stone. "Being ready is not the same as being everywhere," she said. "And we were not ready to reveal ourselves." Gideon stared at her. "Reveal what?" Mercer tapped the table. A projection rose, showing routes, hidden depots, and ship silhouettes. The shapes were too many to count. "Black Ledger Fleet," Mercer said. Gideon's eyes narrowed. "Earth built this in secret." Mercer nodded. For a long time, Gideon's anger shifted, searching for a new target. "You joined the Synod. You sat in their chamber. You let them talk." "We learned early," Mercer said. "The Synod does not protect the weak. It manages liability." She leaned forward, voice controlled. "If we showed strength too soon, the Dominion and others would have united to crush us," she said. "They would have called it self-defense." The Synod would have nodded. Gideon's mouth went dry. He understood the logic, and that made him hate it more. "So you acted harmless?" he asked. "We acted small," Mercer replied. "We traded. We listened. We built time." Gideon looked at the projection again. Not just ships, infrastructure, hidden lanes, staging nodes, fuel. People trained to move without being seen. "You were preparing?" he said. "We were not passive," Mercer replied. Gideon clenched his hands. "Then why rescue me?" Mercer held his gaze. "Because the Dominion turned you into a symbol," she said. "Symbols matter. Also because you have skills we can use." Gideon swallowed. "You want me to fight for you?" "I want you to choose," Mercer said. She tapped again. New lines appeared on the projection. Dominion shipyards, weapons depots, command relays, fleet staging. "This is Red Line Doctrine," Mercer said. Gideon listened. "We strike only military targets," Mercer said. "We do not attack civilian systems. We do not punish populations. We remove the teeth." Gideon's jaw tightened. They did not follow any red line at Asterian Reach. "I know," Mercer said. "Then why should we?" Gideon asked. Mercer did not soften. "Because if we become them, the galaxy will treat us like them," she said. "Because if we cross that line, the Synod will stop pretending and openly support whoever claims to stop us. The room behind her kept moving, quiet and precise. And because discipline is a weapon they do not understand, Mercer added. Gideon felt the words land hard. He thought of Nix Vero's calm voice. He thought of Dravik's laughter. He thought of Voss planning a gift, and a cage. They want a story, Gideon said. Mercer nodded. Yes, they want to write it. Redline Doctrine denies them the ending they prepared. Gideon stared at the targets. He imagined striking them. He imagined the relief of watching Dominion power collapse. Then he remembered corridors full of people trying to breathe while systems failed. He exhaled slowly. You saved their crew, he said, thinking of the ship they escaped. You did not kill them. Mercer replied evenly. We do not need their blood. We need their capability gone. Gideon's hands trembled once, then steadied. What do you need from me? He asked. Mercer lowered her voice. Archon Mailer Voss is staging a public transfer, she said. He wants to display you to the Synod. Nix Varro has already written captions. She held Gideon's gaze. We will answer without giving them what they want, Mercer said. We will take their ability to harm. We will keep our line. Gideon's grief flared, hot and sharp. He wanted shortcuts. He wanted fire. Mercer read it in his face. You can pursue revenge, she said, or you can pursue consequence. One burns fast. The other changes the map. I do not care about maps, Gideon said. I care about what they did. Mercer nodded once. Then help us make sure they cannot do it again. Gideon looked down at his hands. He remembered pressing a sealed door that would not open. He remembered walking away from Rowan under a beam he could not lift. He lifted his head. Tell me the job, Gideon said. Mercer's expression sharpened, like a blade finally taken out of a sheath. We start by taking back the story, she said. Then we take back the sky. Gideon took a slow breath through clean air in a place not supposed to exist. He did not feel healed. He did not feel safe. He felt aligned with something larger than rage, and that terrified him almost as much as it steadied him. Somewhere in the Synod, Dravik would still be smiling. Nix Varro would still be writing. Voss would still be confident. They believed Earth was silent because Earth was weak. Gideon looked at the projection of the hidden fleet and understood the truth. Earth had been silent because Earth was counting. Gideon did not like being bait. He had spent weeks turning himself into a knife, not a flag. Now, he sat in a briefing bay under Lunar Rock, listening to calm voices describe how the Dominion wanted to use him like a poster. Admiral Sloan Mercer stood beside a projection of space lanes near Terran border markers. The lanes looked ordinary, and that was the danger. They are not coming to win a battle, Mercer said. They are coming to win a broadcast. Gideon kept his hands flat on the table. Nix Varro will do it again. Yes, Mercer said. This time we decide what the cameras see. A tactical officer in plain uniform stepped forward. A Dominion capture group is moving in under a neutral pretext, the officer said. A scouting cluster will cross the borderline and claim navigational error. Gideon frowned. A mistake that looks polite? Exactly, Mercer replied. They want us to overreact. They want a stray shot to hit something that is not a warship. Gideon felt his jaw tighten. So we do nothing. We do something clean, Mercer said. We do it where every sensor log can prove it. The officer changed the view. Dominion ships appeared, modest in number, but arranged with intent. Ghosted shapes sat farther back, likely drones and relay nodes built for recording. Gideon pointed at the ghosted shapes. Those are cameras. They are more than cameras, Mercer said. They're a story machine. Nix Varro will cut and label every frame. Gideon stared at the lane. They want me alive. They want you alive on their terms, Mercer said. They want you as evidence that humans are disorder. A quiet pause settled. The hidden fleet around them kept moving behind walls, silent, disciplined. Gideon had never been in a place where power did not need to shout. Mercer leaned closer. You will fly near the border marker on a predictable path, she said. You will look like you are alone. Gideon let out a short breath. I hate this. I know, Mercer said. You are not alone this time. A door opened behind Gideon. A small team entered, suits unmarked, eyes sharp. They did not look like heroes. They looked like people trained to avoid being seen. The team leader nodded at Gideon. "We keep you alive," the leader said. "You do not improvise." Gideon almost laughed. "You are telling me not to improvise?" The leader did not smile. "Improvisation is what the Dominion expect from grief," the leader said. "Discipline is what they do not know how to frame." Gideon looked back to Mercer. "If they lock onto me, they will chase." "Yes," Mercer said. "They will chase into a corridor we choose." Gideon swallowed. "And if they try to use a civilian platform to force our hand?" Mercer stayed flat. "We do not give them one. We move the line away from anything they can exploit." The plan was simple in shape and brutal in intent. Gideon would be the lure. The Dominion would commit. Earth would respond with a strike that left no collateral to debate. Gideon stood and walked toward the hangar corridor. Behind him, Mercer called his name. "Gideon." He turned. "You will want to break the rules when you see them," Mercer said. "Do not." Gideon held her gaze. "If I do not, will it still count?" "It will count more," Mercer said. The border marker blinked at emptiness. Space looked wide and calm, the kind of calm that tricked people into thinking nothing was hunting. Gideon's craft had been upgraded, but it still felt like a tool, not a home. He did not name it. He treated it like a blade that could be taken away. He flew a line that looked careless on purpose. Engine burned steady and readable, like a lone raider who thought no one was watching. A warning ping appeared on his display, not from his own sensors. It came from a quiet Terran relay beyond civilian channels. Multiple contacts. Closing. Gideon kept breathing slow. "They are here," he said into communications. A calm voice answered, low and controlled. "Hold your line. Let them commit." Dominion ships appeared as faint shapes, then hard silhouettes. They did not open fire. They moved like predators that wanted the capture clean. A voice came across an open band, smooth and public. "Gideon Cade, power down and you'll be treated fairly." Gideon did not answer. Another signal joined, sharper. Warden Curator Nix Varro spoke like she was reading a prepared caption. "This human is a criminal operating near neutral lanes. Any Terran interference will be recorded and judged." Gideon's hands tightened. He stared at the Dominion ships, then at the space around them. He could almost feel the hidden drones positioned to catch a single Terran mistake. Now the calm voice said, the sky did not go dark. It went wrong. For a brief window, Gideon's display filled with static, then cleared into a blank grid. His sensors were not dead. They were being told by a stronger system to ignore certain inputs. "Deadlight protocol is active," the voice said. "Do not chase what you cannot see." The Dominion formation stuttered, like their shared picture of space had been erased mid-sentence. One ship fired a probing burst, and the burst faded at the boundary, contained. "Null lattice screen is up," the voice said. "Their fire will not cross the boundary." Terran strike elements appeared from blind angles, not as a glorious charge, as a precise pattern. They hit propulsion nodes and guidance spines, not hulls and not life support. Dominion ships drifted off their own lines, coherence cut at the knees. "Inertial shear net is engaged," Mercer said. "Their orbits are locked." The engagement lasted less than a minute. No long chase, no heroic exchange. Terran strikes hit engines, guidance, and command spines. Dominion ships went quiet one by one, intact, present, helpless. A Terran voice opened on a recorded band. Engagement log begins. Targets confirmed military. No civilian traffic within corridor. Safe passage lanes maintained. Another voice followed. All strikes limited to propulsion and command systems. No life support breaches observed. Gideon understood the point. This was not just a win. It was evidence. Nix Varro spoke again, but the performance had lost rhythm. "This is interference. This is unlawful." Mercer answered on an open band the Dominion could not block. "This is a defensive action against armed incursion. All logs will be delivered to the Accordium Synod." The Dominion ships drifted silent. The cameras meant to frame Earth now framed something else. A clean corridor. A clean strike. A clean record. Gideon exhaled slowly. His anger pressed against discipline like a wave against stone. This time the stone held. Archon Mailer Voss watched the playback without blinking. The recording showed his capture group entering the corridor with practiced restraint. It showed Nix Vero's prepared narration. It showed sudden blindness, contained fire, locked trajectories. It showed Terran control that did not look emotional. Voss did not curse. He breathed out once, like adjusting an equation. Nix Vero's projection hovered in the command chamber, expression composed but tight. They built a stage where no civilians could appear. Nix said, "They denied me the label." Envoy Sale Dravik's image flickered in, smiling like someone who enjoyed problems. "Then we changed the stage," Dravik said. "We pull them toward a place where labels are easier." Voss looked at both. "They are choosing," he said. "They are not reacting." Nix narrowed her eyes. "Then we force a choice." Dravik leaned forward. "Earth is hiding behind doctrine," he said. "Make them defend something expensive. Make them defend time." Voss turned to a strategic map. Dominion industrial nodes, shipyards, munitions chains, relay clusters. Terran shipping lanes feeding distant habitats, and fleet staging, drawn away from civilian centers. Earth had boundaries. Boundaries meant predictability. "We do not attack their civilians," Voss said. "Not yet. We attack their ability to keep war clean." Nix nodded slowly. "We provoke errors. We provoke fatigue," Dravik added. "Fatigue makes mistakes. Mistakes make headlines." Voss shifted forces inward on the map. "We move the conflict toward our industrial core," he said. "We make Earth either strike deep or lose momentum." Nix's voice turned softer. "And Gideon Cade?" Voss allowed a small smile. "He is still useful. A man with grief will always want a direct path." Far away, in the Obsidian network, Admiral Sloan Mercer stood before a different map. Officers marked Dominion industrial chains, command relays, and war production hubs. Gideon stood beside the table, eyes locked on projected targets. He felt the pull of a simple answer, a direct kill, a burning end. Mercer watched him and spoke first. "Voss will try to drag us into a messy fight," she said. "He will want our doctrine to crack." Gideon's voice came out low. "Let me go ahead of the fleet." "As what?" an officer asked. "As eyes," Gideon said. "As the one who knows how their patrols think." Mercer held his gaze. "You will not freelance." "I will not," Gideon said. Mercer nodded. "Recon line and pathfinding. You mark the locks we cut. You do not choose targets. You confirm them." Gideon's anger pressed again. He forced it down into something usable. "What about Nix Vero?" he asked. "What about Dravik?" "They will try to win the story," Mercer said. "We will win the record." A communications operator looked up. Long-range indicators show Dominion mass movement. Voss is shifting forces inward. Mercer did not smile. Relief showed in a grim way. "Good," she said. "He is telling us where the teeth are." Gideon stared at the map, until the lines felt like veins in his own hands. He had wanted to be the one who ended this. Now he was part of something that could end the Dominion's ability to repeat it. Outside the facility, ships moved through lanes that did not exist on public charts. They moved like a quiet tide, each one another line in a ledger waiting to be read. Somewhere in Dominion space, Archon Mailer Voss prepared a deeper trap, believing Earth would eventually blink. Gideon did not plan to blink. Caraxes Prime looked like a machine that never slept. Its orbital ring carried ship frames like ribs, lit by welding arcs and cold floodlights. Beyond it, the Dominion held a dense grid of command relays, fuel stores, and hardened launch spines. Earth did not announce arrival. The Black Ledger fleet came in on quiet lanes and strict timing, sliding into angles Dominion surveillance expected to be empty. Gideon watched the tactical display and felt his throat tighten, not from fear, from the weight of control. Admiral Sloan Mercer spoke steady in his communications. "You confirm the nodes. You do not chase targets." Gideon answered low. "Understood." Dominion pickets detected the first ripple too late. Long-range queries flashed across the grid, then died like they were swallowed. Deadlight Protocol did not look dramatic. It looked like the enemy losing the ability to agree on what they were seeing. Archon Mailer Voss responded fast. Gideon expected rage, but the first move was smarter. Dominion ships pivoted to shield the shipyards and sent decoy formations toward Earth's outer screen, trying to draw fire into wider space. Mercer did not take the bait. Hold the boundary. Null lattice screen stays up. Dominion volleys hit the engagement edge and faded, contained and denied any chance to drift into civilian lanes. Gideon's craft moved along the planned corridor, small and fast. He watched the shipyard ring and the relay cluster behind it, marking what mattered. Primary Command's spine is active, Gideon said. Military broadcast hub is live. A Dominion interceptor wing broke from cover and lunged toward him. Gideon felt the old instinct rise. He wanted to turn into them and burn a path. He held his line. Terran strike elements appeared from the blind window, not in a glorious charge, in a precise pattern. They hit propulsion nodes and guidance spines, not hulls and not life. Support. Dominion ships drifted off their own vectors, formation coherence cut clean. Inertial shear net is engaged, Mercer said. Lock their orbits. Keep the box tight. Voss adjusted again. He used the shipyard itself as a tool. Automated construction rigs swung into motion, ejecting scrap mass and hot debris into the corridor, trying to force a collision and a messy casualty. Gideon saw the hazard cloud and felt his pulse spike. Debris field incoming, he warned. They're trying to make us hit the ring. Mercer replied without pause. Shear net offset. Redirect the mass. Keep it away from the ring. The debris cloud bent like a river pulled by engineered gravity gradients. It slid into a safe corridor cleared hours before, invisible to anyone not watching the planning logs. Dominion guns fired harder, aimed at Earth's screening nodes. The shots did not reach open space. Null lattice screen caught them and bled them out inside the box, turning fury into heat that could not spread. A Dominion cruiser surged forward on auxiliary thrust, trying to ram a Terran ship and force a lethal response. The Terran ship did not shoot through the cruiser's habitation arc. It clipped the engine mount instead, exact and controlled. The cruiser drifted, intact and helpless. Voss had forced a close-range dilemma and still did not get blood on Earth's hands. Gideon whispered, more confession than comment. They planned for every ugly ending. Mercer's tones softened by a fraction, then returned to steel. We planned for the clean one. The shipyard ring went dark section by section, not destroyed, severed from military production. Power spines feeding weapons assembly shut down. Munitions pallets vented safing gas and locked in place, unable to arm. The military broadcast hub tried to transmit a new narrative. Nix Vero's voice began to rise over the band, ready to label. Then the hub went silent. Voss did not stop fighting. He shifted to distributed control, trying to reroute commands through smaller nodes. He tried to keep launch spines alive. Gideon marked reroutes on his display, and Terran strikes removed them one by one. The battle did not end with a single explosion. It ended with a pattern collapsing. Dominion ships drifted in locked arcs, weapons offline, command silent. Caraxes Prime still hung there alive. Its lights still glowed over civilian infrastructure Earth did not touch. Gideon felt the truth land. Like weight, Earth had not come to burn a world. Earth had come to remove a habit. The next hours felt longer than the fighting. That was how Gideon knew the strategy was working. War that stayed clean took patience. It took restraint when adrenaline wanted shortcuts. Across Dominion space, Terran task groups moved in coordinated sweeps. They hit shipyards, fleet depots, command bunkers, and military relays. Same method. Disable propulsion. Sever command. Lock orbit. Document everything. When Dominion forces hid munitions near civilian grids, Terran forces did not strike the grids. They cut supply routes and power to the munitions nodes, forcing a choice. Dominion units abandoned caches rather than expose their own civilians to a blast. Gideon watched logs stream in. Each entry included target classification, engagement boundary, safety corridor, and post-strike verification. The paperwork moved as fast as the weapons. Nix Varro did not stop. Her channels flooded synod bands with framed clips and chosen angles. She tried to show Terran aggression and overreach. Then the counter-feed appeared, not as propaganda, as raw logs and multi-angle sensor records. Engagement boxes, safety corridors, withheld shots, avoided arcs, measured cuts. The Accordion Synod could argue morality when evidence was fuzzy. It could not argue when evidence was stacked and signed. Envoy Sale Dravik tried to pivot. He claimed Earth performed restraint only to hide greater cruelty. He claimed humiliation was violence. A delegate finally asked the simplest question, the one fear had delayed. Are civilians being targeted? Nix answered first, smooth and cold. Earth has the capacity. Capacity is threat. Then the procedural counselor displayed the logs. Not edited, not narrated, just records. The counselor's voice shook, not with outrage, with realization. All verified strikes are against military assets. Civilian systems remain intact. Another delegate leaned forward. The Dominion's war production is collapsing. Their fleets cannot launch. Dravik's smile thinned. He looked, for the first time, like a man noticing a door had closed behind him. In Dominion-held regions, gates opened, not by speeches, by patrol craft drifting powerless and supply chains snapping. Worlds squeezed for tribute felt the grip loosen, then vanish. Earth did not occupy cities. Earth did not demand worship. Earth transmitted a single condition, repeated in plain language. Military capacity removed. Civilian autonomy recognized. Further aggression will be met with the same doctrine. The galaxy did not feel safe yet, but it felt different. For the first time in a long time, the Dominion looked mortal. Director Halden Price stood in the Synod chamber where words had been used to avoid action. He wore a simple uniform, no theater and no bright sash. He carried a thin case that looked like an accountant's tool more than a weapon. He placed it on the central table. The case opened, and chamber screens filled with a structured archive. Not montage, a ledger. Price spoke at a pace designed for translation, steady and clear. This is the record of Dominion actions against Terran civilians and Terran settlements, he said. This is also the record of Terran responses. Dravik rose with practiced contempt. Records can be curated. Stories can be shaped. Price did not argue with style. He argued with structure. These entries include independent sensor hashes from neutral systems, Price said. Crownline Freeport logs are included. Synod relays are included. Nix Vero's projection flickered, eyes narrowed. Earth is presenting itself as moral authority. That is dangerous. Price looked up at her projection. We are presenting a boundary, he replied. A boundary is safer than a lie. A delegate asked carefully, what boundary? Price kept his hands visible. Redline doctrine stands, he said. We strike military capacity. We do not target civilians. A murmur moved across the chamber. Price raised one hand, holding it back. The next part had to be said without heat. There is one more principle, he said. We will not allow harm to civilians to be normalized. He did not perform grief. He stated a rule. Gideon watched from a side platform reserved for witnesses. He did not want to be visible. Price had insisted. You were their symbol, Price had said. Now you are our witness. Gideon felt exposed. He also felt something he had not felt since Asterian Reach. A path forward that did not require becoming what he hated. Dravik tried again, softer. If Earth holds such power, why not finish the Dominion? Why not remove the threat permanently? He asked. Price answered in a tone that cut deeper than anger. Because ending a threat by becoming a threat is not an ending, he said. It is a trade. The chamber went still. Even Nix did not speak for a breath. The Sable Dominion will remain intact as a civilian society, Price said. Its military industry has been dismantled. Its command networks have been severed. He let the words land. If it rebuilds to harm others, the record will show it, Price continued. And the response will follow the same boundary. A delegate asked what everyone had avoided. An accountability for those who ordered the attacks. Price's eyes moved briefly to Nix, then to Dravik, then to empty air where Voss would have stood if he had accepted this forum. Our operations preserve life to preserve choices, Price said. Now the Synod must prove it is more than ceremony. After the session, Gideon stood in a quiet corridor outside the chamber. Admiral Sloan Mercer approached, posture tired but controlled. "It is over?" Gideon asked. Mercer did not lie. "The campaign phase is over. The work phase begins." Gideon stared at the floor, then up at her. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. "You know Dominion patrol logic," Mercer said. "You know how fear spreads. You will join a monitoring station near Caraxes routes." She held his gaze. "You will help keep the tea from growing back." Gideon's throat tightened. "That is not revenge. It is prevention," Mercer said. He exhaled slowly. Grief did not vanish. It settled into a shape he could carry without poisoning everything. "I can do that," Gideon said. Mercer nodded. "Good. Then you will live with the memory and still build something better." Gideon looked back toward the chamber doors. Behind them, a galaxy was learning new limits. Earth had not forgotten. Earth had not gone soft. Earth had chosen a different kind of strength. It is easier to win a battle than to win the right to stop. Earth did not come to erase a people. Earth came to erase a machine of conquest. Shipyards went silent. War relays went dark. The Dominion's reach was cut back to its borders, and worlds took their first breath in years. Gideon Cade, the man who tried to carry grief like a weapon, found a harder victory. Not revenge. Responsibility. A war can end in minutes, but restraint has to be rebuilt every day. The ledger still stands. The line is still red. The stars are quiet now, not from fear of chaos, from fear of consequence. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm you want more worlds like this. Share it with someone who loves hard science fiction with real moral weight. And subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next voyage, the next battle, and the next line the galaxy dares to cross. Until next time, stay sharp, stay kind, and remember, power is easy. Control is earned.